Hi, everyone. It's Rabbi Helfgott on video again from our command center here at home, 740 Palmer Avenue. I hope everyone is well. I hope your families are well. We continue to daven and pray and think about those who are not well, who are ill, as well as those who are recovering and on the difficult path to full recovery, as well as those who were mildly ill. And again, we just wish them the best, and we continue to daven for everyone and think about everyone. This week is a exciting week. Friday is Yom Yerushalayim. Get a chance to connect back to a recent part of Jewish history, immediate Jewish and Israeli history. And of course, Yom Yerushalayim is not only about Yerushalayim, even though we focus so much on Jerusalem. And we sent out some links in the announcements that some exciting links that you can look at, videos connecting to different elements of that special day in Jewish history. But it's also about the fact that there was a real fear that Israel would be run over and there would be terrible tragedy of the defeat of the state of Israel, and who knows with how many casualties. And Baruch Hashem, that did not take place, and just the opposite, even though there were many losses compared to what they thought was not what happened, and there was a tremendous sense of relief and a tremendous sense of living a historical and Jewish history coming to life and connecting back to our roots. So this coming Friday is Yom Yerushalayim, and so please insert Hallel in your tefillah and try to look at some of those links during the course of the day. This week's parasha is Prashat Bamindbar. The Jewish people enter into the desert, even though we've been in the desert, so to speak, for a year or so. In Shemot, we left Egypt. We built the Mishkan. Around Har Sinai, we received the Torah. But you didn't really get the sense of wanderings and the sense of traveling, because they didn't really travel for a year. After the Chet HaEgel, they built the Mishkan, and they received the book of Vayikra with all of its detailed laws relating to the sacrificial system, to the laws of Tumah v'Tohara, to the laws of holidays, and the sanction that came with the Brit in last week's Parshiot, warning if you don't live up to the covenant. So we didn't really get the sense, the feeling of being in the desert and going into the desert. This week we start that. They talk about organizing the camp and how the camp will move. And eventually we're going to learn about different techniques of how Moshe Rabbeinu and the Kohanim will blow on the chatzotzrot, they'll blow on the trumpets. And certain trumpets are to gather the people in the desert. Some of them are to move the people. And the goal is ultimately to reach the land of Israel. It was supposed to be a short couple of weeks travel and eventually enter the land of Israel and set up an independent polity in Eretz Yisrael, try to fulfill the Torah that they had been given in the desert. But of course, that's not what happens. Part of the tragedy of the book of Bamidbar is that there are many missteps along the way. The Chet HaMeraglim, the sin of the spies, the sin of the mitonenim, the sin of the people complaining about wanting certain luxuries, the sin of Korach, many other sins challenging the leadership of Moshe, the sin of the water. Ultimately, there are lots of episodes that preclude the Jewish people from entering the land of Israel, and eventually they remain in the land of Israel for in the desert for another 38 years. And so on one level, the book of Bamidbar is a book of transition from the first generation to the second generation, but there's a lot of tragedy involved in this transition and in this move. Tragedy of what could have been, tragedy of what should have been, a tragedy of missed opportunities, of fisfus, as they say in Hebrew. And that's one way that we perceive the history of the Midbar. And it's certainly an essential part of that experience. What's interesting is that some mifarshim, some commentaries, also note that there may be another element in addition to this when we think about the Midbar experience, we think about the desert experience. You know that at the very beginning of the desert experience, when they left Egypt, God already did not take them in the easy route, up the coastal road, up what we today call Gaza, straight into the land of Israel. God took them in a circuitous route. He wanted to reach Har Sinai and give them the Torah, but he also, on some level, wanted to do something else. Maimonides most famously tells us in the Moreh HaNevuchim, he says, "She'ein b'teva adam she'igdal al melechet avdut b'chomer u'b'levenim, ve'achar kach yirchatz yadav l'shato m'nichlucham v'yilachem im yilidei hanak pitom." The Rambam famously develops the idea of the slave mentality that the Jewish people for hundreds of years had been ensconced in. It's impossible for simply one day or 1 week to get up and become fully independent, to be able to take on the challenges of running a society, of creating an army, fighting, developing, and experiencing what they need in order to conquer the land of Israel. They needed time. They needed time, says Rambam, to go through the crucible of the desert. And he says, it was part of God's ultimate wisdom, part of the divine plan, that in addition to whatever they did, there would be a period of time in the desert where they would learn how to deal with adversity, where they would learn what they were made of, and they would be strengthened and be sharpened, and eventually they would reach the land of Israel, but in a more tough state and more willing and able to deal with some of the challenges that they would find. And so the desert experience for the Rambam and for others, in addition to it being a missed opportunity, also part of it shaped the Jewish people and made it stronger and gave it the ability to fulfill its destiny. And there's a final element. Rashi, at the beginning of this week's parasha, has a beautiful, beautiful comment quoting the Midrash. The Midrash notes that the Jewish people have been counted. The beginning of Bamindbar takes, that's why it's called in English, numbers. The beginning of Bamindbar talks about a census. And the Jewish people are counted. And it's not really necessary because they were counted in the book of Shmot less than a year ago. And yet the Torah counts them again. God counts them again. And Rashi says, Mitoch chibatan mina'an. It's out of love of the Jewish people that God counted them in the desert. He counted them over and over again at every stage. He wanted to see where they were, and he loved them and embraced them. And it's interesting that there's a reciprocal relationship because the Torah says, the Nevi'im say, very famous passage in the book of Yirmiyahu that is in the Machzor. It's cited in the Rosh Hashanah davening as well. When we do Zichronot, we do the passages of remembrance. Zacharti la chesed ne'urayich, ahavat kulotayich, lechtech acharai b'midbar be'eretz lo zruah. Yirmiyahu chooses to ignore all of the sins of the Midbar experience, chooses to ignore all of the waywardness and rebelliousness. And he focuses on the tremendous trust and faith and love that the Jewish people had for God, to follow God into a difficult situation, into the unknown, into the uncertainty of the Midbar. And they followed God out of love. And so the desert experience is also a time, it's almost like a honeymoon, a time of love, of great struggle, but also of great love. And so when we think about the Midbar, and maybe when we think about the challenges that we experience in life, maybe including the challenges we are now experiencing, we have those three elements that are involved. We have the elements of tragedy, of missed opportunity, of loss, of a sense of grieving. But we also have elements of the sense of growth, that hopefully we can emerge stronger. And we also have a sense of love that we want to experience, love where we can find it, even in the midst of a limited experience. Love for Hashem, love for each other, love for the community. And we want to feel that as well in our life and in our experiences. I just want to encourage everyone. I know you all got an email from Deborah and myself. Please to encourage everyone to join us for the Havdalah ceremony this week and every week. It's short and it's a wonderful way that we can all connect and see each other even though we can't physically be together, to be able to at least see each other for a few moments of connection, of spiritual connection. Of course, I encourage everyone to join us for the beautiful Kabbalat Shabbat, 7:15 as well. but certainly take a few moments and join us for Havdalah every week. I want to wish you and your families a peaceful, restful, and meaningful Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom, Prashat Bamindbar, Happy Yom Yerushalayim, and Rosh Chodesh Sameach on Shabbat, on Sunday, excuse me.